on that on the alleged mismanagement of fund for the presidential initiative on Northeast, and they are now through with that investigation, and they've asked that he be prosecuted.
And of course, just to remind you, the SGF, Babachir Lawal, has been accused of contravening the provisions of the Public Procurement Act of 2007, and of course, having mismanaged over 500 million naira in what's now known as the grass cutting scandal. And like Precious did mention, the Senate had invited him to probe him, as it were, and of course, it did turn that down. But with all of the investigations that have been carried out, there are calls that he be prosecuted, having been found to some extent guilty of some of the charges placed against him. But again, while we look at the investigation and of course the fact that he be prosecuted as is demanded by the Senate, the fact that when a time when the country is fighting corruption, and of course we want to see the government play true to the promises to fight corruption to the last, that's why the Senate and of course many Nigerians are asking that since this whole scandal has been investigated for a while now, and this man has been found guilty of some of the charges placed against him, it's just right that in the fight against corruption, whoever is in government is found and is found guilty of being involved in any mismanagement of funds, of course, be prosecuted. So, of course, we're going to be seeing how this whole thing plays out.
Just to state that he's not been found guilty, that will be determined by the court of law if he's been taken to court. But that's why the National Assembly is asking for prosecution in terms of, okay, let's take this case to court and let the court decide.
And also, in addition to that, the National Assembly is also making a request for him to appear before the committee in charge of the case, and we do hope that he shows up this time, considering that he has failed to show up previous times. And also, he has been, for some of the accusations, just like Precious said, he has not been found guilty yet, but because the panel has said that further investigation continues, all the relevant agencies and contractors given that contract are expected to show up with their reports, and considering the urgency of the PINE initiative, we are expected to get a report from PINE also on the award of contract if truly Babachir Lawal is guilty of the crime he has been accused of. But again, it's a good step in the right direction, just like Jumoke said, in a government where people where we are fighting corruption, and we do expect that there wouldn't be favor for anyone. If whoever is found guilty or whoever is suspected to be involved in any form of corruption would do the needful step down. There has been call for his resignation before the federal government decided to suspend him from office, and we do hope that this cuts across all other agencies. We know that there are some agencies too where people are being accused of corruption, where investigations are going on, and we do expect that as long as there are evidence to show that someone is culpable, the law should take its course. That's just it.
Okay, as long as there's evidence that someone is culpable, law should take its course. And a lot of people did say that you mentioned that this is a government that's fighting corruption. That's why that was a clamor initially when not just him. It was I know the EFCC chairman or acting chairman Magu was also part of that situation. Where people said if you're indeed true to the fact that you're fighting corruption in this government, then you must start within your from your cabinet. And so it was when he was suspended, people felt that really he should have stepped aside for a while just so that the investigation is properly done. But we know that in Nigeria that's not the culture yet. Hopefully we get there when you're indicted for something or you're allegedly accused of something and you step down for investigation to be carried out. But we also know that people don't step down because what if I step down, I'm declared not guilty? Do I still have my position back? Yeah. But that's the situation now with Babachir Lawal rather. He's been summoned again by the Senate. His Senate is saying, look, we're asking for his prosecution. He's been summoned again for the fourth time because he refused to show up. He didn't show up for the third time. He's been summoned again for the fourth time. Investigation is still ongoing. The Senate has said anybody who was involved in that contract that has been paid full but has not completed their work should get back to work and complete their work. And then one of the things they said was that there was no bill of quantity, which was one of the major crimes. The fact that you buy something and then there is this is how many we bought concerning this. You see the amount, but you don't know the quantity. So some of the issues that came up in the investigation. The investigation is still ongoing. Many people have been summoned. We'll follow that story for you and bring you more reports. We're going to take a break now. And when we return, AM Live will continue. Just stay with us.
still watching AM Live coming to you from the studios of New Frontiers Television. And of course, we told you earlier that lots of things has happened in the last 24 hours in Nigeria. Our first, the grass cutting scandal. Senate has indicted, suspended SGF, Babashi Lawal, and they are calling for his prosecution. Also, moving on to the next story, which is the case of the president's health. Recently, on May 1st, to be precise, workers protested in Abuja when the president was not there to give them the speech concerning the workers. Calls from all around the country has been on for the president, for the presidency to declare the state of health of President Muhammadu Buhari. But on Tuesday, that was on May 2nd, the president resumed official duty. The Minister of Information last week has said that the president will continue to work from home, but today, just yesterday, he moved to his office back in Aso Rock to start work, and I'm glad he did.
He also lives in Aso Rock, so.
Oh well, he has moved to his office. He no longer works at home.
Okay. The thing is that we know that the president has health challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, he did go to the hospital in January, returned in he was supposed to return in February, but didn't return in February. Sometime in March. And he mentioned while he was addressing the nation in his return that he was also that he was going to go back in a few weeks' time to see his doctors, but obviously he has not gone back. He's still around, and people are just saying, look, if there's something wrong with your health, you can as well just tell us and then go. I mean, you've mentioned it. It's not even a thing of telling us all over again. You've mentioned it. You can go back and take care of yourself. But the thing is not even about the president's health. I mean, most Nigerians will tell you it's never really about his health. People fall ill. I mean, everybody fall ill. You take care of yourself and then you move on. You get better and then you move on. But it's how the presidency handles issues like this. The shroud of secrecy around his health. You ask questions, even as journalists, you ask questions as to the president's health and his cabinet. Nobody tells you anything. Even those who are supposed to be addressing the media and saying, this is exactly what's happening with the president's health, don't say anything. Is he okay? Is he not okay? Is he resting? Is he not resting? What's happening? Nigerians just wanted to know what's happening. And some of these issues were addressed before May 1st, Workers' Day, wouldn't have had that rally that happened. We saw the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Chris Ngige, trying to, Chris Ngige, Minister of Labour, trying to address the crowd workers. And, they just didn't want to listen because for them, some of these issues, you can't address us when you have not addressed the issues around the president's health.
Well, actually, the suspicion of Nigerians had been aroused when the president began to miss the National Executive Council meetings and the vice president had to oversee the meeting, sit at the head of the meeting. And of course, barely 24 hours after civil organizations, particularly Femi Falana, a woman rights activist, asked the president to go on a health leave, go for some, probably further checkup, go for some leave to attend to his health, the president had decided to resume office. It's okay, Nigerians actually want him to sit as a president of the country. But again, like you mentioned, the fact that Nigerians are not allowed as much information as necessary as the state of the health of the president, until, of course, his wife, First Lady Aisha Buhari, came up to say, give some few information as to the state of the health of the president, saying his health is not as bad as we think it is, as it were. We're not asking how bad it is, but we need as much information as we need as citizens of this country as to the well-being of the president. And of course, while we're asking why he would have to be working from home, the Minister of Information did come up to say there wasn't anything wrong with the president working from home. What mattered was that he was working all the while he wasn't sitting in his office. What mattered was the country was moving forward. But again, while we say the president resumed office, is met with the Attorney General of the Federation. He's also met with Kachuku, Minister of State for Petroleum, and of course things are moving. We're seeing the country is, of course, it was never static in the first instance, but things are moving. We're only hoping that his resumption wouldn't be stalled by further health challenges. But even if he had to take some leave, it would be good enough that Nigerians, it's information, we're looking at access to information, that we know a bit about the state of health of the president. And if he needs to go for further medical checkups, like we've actually agreed upon, it's okay to fall ill, attend to your health, and of course, get back to your responsibilities. But again, we're excited at the resumption of the president into office. Work never stopped actually, but it is resumed work in his office. We're hoping that his responsibilities as a president will of course continue and his health challenge will not make for further delay in every move that needs to be made from the office, from his office as the president, and not basically from the presidency.
Okay. Well, I was going to pick up on that. That while the work has not stopped, we know that the president, the challenge of results has been causing delay in some decision makings. Because I know Nigerians, we've been waiting to hear about the suspension of Babachi Lawal and that of the DIG of the NIA. Nigerians have been expecting the presidency to give a statement on all of these issues, but again, it was part of what the Attorney General of the Federation discussed with the president yesterday, and we do hope that the investigation would happen fast, and there's no stalling. Decisions that needs to be made. Someone was saying yesterday that when we have the president, the vice president can't act as he's no longer the acting president now. He is the vice president because we have the president in the country. And seriously, I'm actually worried that the president is not going back for his medical checkup. He should, if it's important that he gets checked, he should get checked. There's this thing about if we're scared that people are going to talk. If he goes, people are going to talk. If he doesn't go, people are going to talk. Just like conversations have been coming up in recent days. So it's best for the president to pay attention to his health, and we can have a better Nigeria. We still have, I think, 2+ years he still has over 2 years to spend in office, and we do expect that he spends the rest of the years in good health and good condition, and so that Nigeria is for the betterment of the country.
I don't think it's about people talking, because he's mentioned it before. I mean, that was one of the things he mentioned when he came to the country, that he's going to go back. So for me, that's not even the problem. The issue is, they keep saying, fake news. When you put out the truth, there'll be no room for fake news. But there were a lot of speculations around his health. There were a lot of people came out. Online news media came out to say, look, this is what's going on at the presidency. And if it will take somebody who is if you're not a journalist, if you take somebody who doesn't just take in all the information, to not take in all of those information and believe them. So for situations like this, his special assistant, media, publicity, online media, all of his special assistant, even the Minister of Information and Culture, should always put, at least, even if it's not 100% truth, put the facts out there. This is what's going on, and just so that you don't give room, for speculations. And when speculations build up, anger build up, and then people started to make demands and say, we want to know what's wrong with the president. That's why he had, that kind of rally. Why are we talking about all of these issues today? We have, everybody's wondering, okay, they're delving into these issues and they're talking about it too much. It's World Press Freedom Day. So we do have the
right to demand information. We don't have the right to information.
Exactly. Well, we need access to information, and I always say this everywhere I go. And although we're not listed as an arm of government, I strongly believe that the media, especially the news media, is the fourth arm of government. It's the silent fourth arm of government. When everything else fails, people rely, citizens rely on the media to put the truth out there, to act as a check and balance for every other arm of government. And the media is one of the arm of government. It's the one that is held accountable the most. People call out the media much more than they would call out even the legislature, the judiciary, or the executive. They will tell you, oh, and I didn't hear that report, so and so happened, and I didn't hear the report, and so and so, because they know that the media is a check and balance for all other arms of government.
And that's what we refer to as the fourth realm of the estate.
Yes.
That's why journalism, freedom to information, of course, Nigeria did pass the Freedom of Information Act. It's just that it's not practicable. We're not seeing its impact. And that's why May 3rd every year, it's a day set aside to celebrate the fundamental principles of press freedom, evaluate press freedom around the world, and of course to defend the media from attacks to their independence, and to pay tribute to journalists who have lost their lives in the exercise of their profession. Nigeria is ranked by Journalism Without Borders as 122 out of 118. Of course, we've had several cases of intimidations of bloggers, of journalists, arrest of journalists, and of course, sometimes we've had cases of death, kidnapped of journalists. And of course, it's a day like this, we're calling for the freedom of information, the protection of journalists, just as we call for protection of every professional. We're asking today particularly that would allow for the thrive of information, of access to information across the world.
Well, the UN General Assembly declared May 3rd to be World Press Freedom Day to raise awareness and the importance of freedom of press and remind governments of their duty to respect and uphold the right to freedom of expression enshrined under Article 19 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and marking the anniversary of the Declaration of Windhoek, a statement of free press principles put together by African newspaper journalists in 1991. It is no longer news that in some parts of the world there's a total clampdown on press freedom. We have lots of journalists in prison in some places in the world, and Pakistan was ranked number 4 on one of the list of the nations that are not totally free with their press. And today we lend our voices with journalists who are currently serving jail time. Those who are because of one news or the other, and we call on governments everywhere to give press freedom. I keep telling people, well, why are people scared of the press? If you have, all they do is give information. If you have a counter information, release the counter information. It's supposed to be based on facts. We're supposed to release information, and if your facts are not conniving with my facts, let's all put out our facts and
myriads of
platforms
for
where
to
people
give
can
information.
Yes. So we shouldn't be scared of the press. Let's give total freedom to press, and we'll be surprised at the amazing things that I think we were talking recently that someone was saying that the Nigerian media cannot be trusted because they're being used as political tools. And my response was that if there's freedom of press, people don't have to. You don't have to work for a politician to get information, but we do different things just to get information, because you can't just walk up, or they tell you can walk up to any public office to get information, but when you get to an office, you know that it's difficult to get information.
True, and that's why we need to start clamoring for the Freedom of Information Bill. It looks like it's been passed actually, but it's not been effective. So we need to start clamoring, if you're in Nigeria, clamoring for the effectiveness of the Freedom of Information Bill. And with countries like the United States, clamping down also on the press. We had issues of President Trump, locking out or shutting out the Guardian, CNN, BBC, out of press conferences. And for situations like that, it puts dictatorships, around the world begin to think this is the right thing to do. If the US can clamp down on press, in fact, I can't even wait to see the Press Freedom Index for this year. I want to see how US ranks, because they currently rank around 11. I actually want to see how they rank. The Scandinavian countries seem to be the ones who are doing well, where, press freedom, in terms of press freedom, countries like Norway, Denmark, Sweden, they are doing so well when it comes to press freedom and allowing the press to thrive. Because the press freedom is a vital part of democracy. You can't take it out. You can't have democracy without press freedom. One doesn't exist without the other. You have to have press freedom to have true democracy. Even if no matter what you do, even if you have all arms of government, press has to thrive. And that's
okay. And that's why we're lending our voices to allowing for first the protection of those people who are opened, were so open to attacks and of course intimidation by different quarters and from different quarters. We're asking that we would see them first as people carrying out the normal responsibilities. And of course, we're in a country, we're in a world where information is one of the things that keep us going. So there are people who have given themselves to getting this information and disseminating them as received to the people. So while we look at how important information is, we should also look at how important it is to allow for the thrive of this information and of course the protection of the rights of those people who give themselves to giving them out. Turkey is also one country which today the world is asking to allow for the right of journalists, to allow for the right of freedom, the access to freedom, the access to information in its country, everywhere in the world. There's no country, like except for some part of the Scandinavian nations, that allow for journalists to just carry out their responsibilities.
And just as way of information, the theme for this year's celebration is Critical Minds for Critical Times, Media's Role in Advancing Peaceful, Just and Inclusive Societies. And of course, it is obvious that we're in critical times.
All right, now let's take a break not from press freedom, but let's take a break, on the show. And when we return, we'll look straight at the papers this morning, headlines on the papers. Do stay with us.
watching AM Live, coming to you from the studios of New Frontiers Television. This is the Morning Brief segment where we bring you headlines from the dailies on the Punch newspaper. My husband's health not as bad as being perceived. Aisha Buhari, that's coming from the First Lady, Mrs. Aisha Buhari. ACF fumes as Afenifere, One Easy, MBC back Akonde on Buhari's health. Details of the story continues on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. Senate's panel recommends suspended SGF's prosecution. Forex, CBN bars 16 banks from SME window. Ex-Governor Lamido rejects bail conditions, remanded in prison. Ex-PDP chieftain Ogundokun vows to remove Iwo monarch. 2014 confab members meet in Abuja, insist on report implementation. NNPC, Chevron, Total to build 2 power plants. Confusion as fire guts Akiolu's palace in Lagos. Details of the stories on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Core members arrested for breaking ATM in Kogi. Federal government yet to prosecute high-profile corrupt persons. This is coming from former President of Nigeria, President Olusegun Obasanjo. And over Sokoto Commissioner's prosecution to states. AGF orders EFCC. And finally, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, 5 ways to break phone addiction. If you're a phone addict, check the inside page of the Punch newspaper to know how to break your way.
Okay, so there is a thing as phone addict, people who just like too much phone and never get work done. Yeah. I guess that's phone addict.
Yes,
okay.
that's
something I might never know. All right, moving on now to the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Extra budgetary bailout for states hit 1.75 trillion naira. The writer says debt profile nears 20 trillion naira, threatens Vision 2020 agenda. The report begins on the front page of the Guardian and continues on page 6. Southwest leaders demand new constitution before 2019 elections. Stakeholders seek action on 2014 confab report. The report here begins on the front page and also continues on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. On the bottom strip here, Senate urges halt to Nigeria-UK prisoner swap deal. That's on News 3. Also on News 3, Obasanjo, Babangida Abubakar meets over Buhari's health. On Metro 12, fire got Oba of Lagos Palace. And finally, the search for Peter Obi, and that's all for the front page of the Guardian newspaper.
Moving on to Metro column of the Punch newspaper. Cobra burns son with fire, breaks arm for stealing. CP6 stiffer punishment for cultism. Police arrest suspected killer of the Palai family. Soldier militants clash. Residents flee Ondo community. Taking stories from Lagos State. Ambode seek quality research for economic growth. Lagos State government saves 2.4 billion naira from stoppage of pilgrimage sponsorship. And quickly going to Ile-Ife, that's in Osun State. Or need to train 6,000 Southwest youths in agriculture.
All right, now looking at the Metro section of the Guardian newspaper. This story began on the front page. Fire got Oba of Lagos Palace. Monarch on hot. Expensive traditional regalia destroyed, says NEMA. Police arrest deaf and dumb suspect for alleged car theft. 7 prisoners jailed 170 years for defrauding bank manager. Okay, that's like forever and ever and ever. It's just 170 years. Father, stepson allegedly raped 12-year-old girl. This issue around abuse of children is becoming an issue that we should put our foot on the ground and say, this is what we're going to do about it.
Exactly. Moving on to the editorial column. 20 million lives threatened by famine. Ethno-religious factor. The principle of informal rotation of power. And on viewpoints, why you should register to vote. Team Omotosho, lessons from South Africa. That's the much from viewpoints editorial and later columns of the Punch newspaper.
All right, now looking at the editorial and the opinion column of the Guardian newspaper. NMA's 5-year plan for health sector. NMA is the Nigerian Medical Association. On the letter column, strategies for Vision 30-30-30. So there is Vision 20-20-20 and there's Vision 30-30-30. And now on the opinion column, White Men, Black Women by Patrick Dele Cole. The Police Force and the Masses, that's by Oladele Oluwasego. Still on Opinion, A Test of Character and Accountability, that's by Simon Abba. And finally, Shell's Duplicitous Corporate Social Responsibility, that's by Sonny Ofiada. And that's all for of the opinion column.
Moving on to business and economy. NNPC, Chevron, Total to build 2 power plants. FG pays oil firms $400 million for cash call. Still on business and economy. Crude oil production now 2 million barrels per day, says Baru. Dr. Maikanti Baru is the group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. We make 75 million naira refunds to customers weekly. This is coming from Arik. The grid is worthless without access to electricity. And this is coming from the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. Federal government gets task force to prosecute electricity thieves. NCA head as Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and the Consumer Protection Council probe Turkish Airlines over students' rights abuse. That's the march from the business and economic columns of the Punch newspaper.
All right, now moving to the industry page or industry column of the Guardian newspaper on the oil industry. NNPC's status in downstream sector no longer sustainable. That's by Kachiku, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources. Nigeria earns $837 million from gas exports. Still on the oil industry, all industry leaders gather in Houston for Nigerian Content Investment Forum. NPDC produces 17 million barrels in 1 year. Côte d'Ivoire to become natural gas regional hub. On power, now moving on to power. PHEDC, which is the Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, battles power outage across 4 states. Nigeria ends, okay, we looked at this before, still on power. 600 million people in Africa lack access to energy, and that's according to reports. Rising on finance now, rising oil prices helped Chevron, ExxonMobil beat profit expectations. On solid minerals, revitalization of Alstom will help import substitution strategy, and that's coming from Fayemi, the Minister of Mines and Steel Development. On freight, NIMASA Navy renew MOU on maritime security. We need hard work to attain global best practices at port. That's by Hadiza Usman. And on community, finally, NDDC explores partnership opportunities in modular refineries.
Moving on to the elsewise column of the Punch newspaper. What to do before going for IVF? Farm access partners Lagos to strengthen healthcare delivery. FEM to donate free anti-malarials to general hospitals. And still on health, WHO, UNICEF explain why immunization fails in Nigeria. Association of Community Pharmacists of Nigeria asked federal government to give pharmacists meningitis vaccine. Upgrade laboratories to tackle disease outbreak. This is coming from the Institute of Public Analysts of Nigeria. And that's the march from health column of the Punch newspaper.
Okay, just to look at the Guardian Tech here, how Piggy Bank and ALAT are banking on Nigerian technology. Still on Guardian Tech, Bati Airtel may merge operations in 6 African markets. Atcon pushes for more co-location operations. Still on Tech, how banks drive state internal revenue through technology. Tel Communications nominates NCC boss Umar Dambata as CEO of the year. And finally, new mobile app redefines a digital lifestyle. And that's all for Tech.
Moving on to Punch Sports. How Joshua stirred up emotions in Shagamu. Federal government to invite world champion. Okay, well, there's a lot going on about Anthony Joshua, the world heavyweight winner.
Everybody's claiming him now.
Yes, yes. And I'm surprised the federal government is inviting him very soon. Zenith Bank Delta Principals Cup. Zonal qualifiers begin on Wednesday. Family plans special celebration for Joshua. Dele Jonathan suffered before death. And finally, full doping control at Okpekpe. That's the international race going on. And that's the much from Punch Sports for today.
All right, now looking at Guardian Sports, Sand Eagles crashed out of Beach Soccer World Cup. Sponsor dangles 12 million naira on Eco School's athletics dash. Camping Super Eagles in France, not a waste of funds, says Erico, as NFF rules out imposition of players. That's all for Guardian Sports. We're going to take a break now to allow for the money news. And after the money news, AM Live will continue. Do stay with us.
Thank you for joining us on Morning News from New Frontiers Television. My name is Olajumoke Babalola. Good morning. Mrs. Aisha Buhari, the wife of ailing President Muhammadu Buhari, has said that her husband's health is not as bad as some people have made others to believe. Mrs. Buhari said this in a message on her Twitter handle at Aisha M. Buhari and her Facebook page Aisha Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday. She said that her husband had continued to carry out his constitutional responsibilities as a president without hindrance. The president's wife thanked all Nigerians for their concern, love, and prayers over her husband's health status. Meanwhile, the Pan-Yoruba social cultural group, Afenifere, the umbrella body for the Igbo, the Ohanaeze Ndigbo, and the Nigerian Baptist Convention have supported calls for proper management of the health of President Muhammadu Buhari so as not to throw the country into crisis. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo has said a major challenge with the anti-corruption drive of the federal government is a lack of successful prosecution of high-profile corruption cases involving politically exposed persons. Obasanjo added that despite the efforts of successive governments, corruption still posed a challenge to the progress and development of Nigeria. The former president said this while delivering an inaugural lecture organized by the National Open University of Nigeria in Abuja. The lecture was titled Leadership, Governance and the Challenges of Development in Nigeria, The Way Forward. Obasanjo, who admitted that Nigeria's poverty and seeming lack of direction was caused by leadership, also said the institution in the country needed to be strengthened to ensure transparency and accountability. Imo State Commissioner of Police, Mr. Chris Ezike, has said that he has started to withdraw policemen attached illegally to politicians in order to beef up security in different police divisions of the state. Ezike stated this while fielding questions from newsmen after he interacted with the leadership of the Imo State House of Assembly. However, the police commissioner added that there were politicians who were entitled to security just like the members of the Imo State House of Assembly, amongst others. We'll take a break. When we return, I'll be back with more news. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. And now we move on to more news. The Ekiti State Governor, Mr. Ayodele Fayose, has ruled out the possibility of contesting the senatorial seat in the 2019 general elections. Clarifying that he will never seek any elective position again, he said his main preoccupation after leaving office would be to continue to agitate for a better Nigeria. The governor spoke in Ado-Ekiti, the state capital, during a meeting with civil servants on grade levels 1 to 7 in the state civil service. Fayose, who saluted the workers for their courage and perseverance in the face of economic recession culminating in unstable payment of salaries, urged them to discountenance the rumor that he had received the second tranche of the Pari Club loan refund. He advised the workers to register at the ongoing continuous voter registration in the interest of Ekiti State. The Vice-Chancellor, University of Ilorin, Professor Abdulganiyu Hambali, has given the earthmen encroaching on the institution's land a 7-day ultimatum to quit. The Vice-Chancellor gave the ultimatum at a meeting he held with the representatives of the earthmen and other stakeholders on the campus. He said that their presence there was a violation of the laws governing the university. Hambali added that the meeting was called because the institution believed in dialogue and peaceful resolution of conflicts. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachuku, has said that the federal government will no longer sponsor delegates to the annual Offshore Technology Conference, OTC, in Houston, Texas, United States, starting from 2018. Kachuku also said that the country has perfected plans to begin an African version of the Offshore Technology Conference in 2018, adding that existing top-rate annual oil and gas conference hosted in the country like Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference and Exhibition would be collapsed into the new, larger and improved conference. The minister made this disclosure at the meeting with investors and stakeholders in Nigeria's oil and gas sector at the ongoing Offshore Technology Conference in Houston, Texas, United States. Kachuku, however, said Nigeria would take the center stage in hosting a version for the African oil market. He noted that the first of these could hold in Abuja, Nigeria. And with this report, we've come to the end of Morning News from New Frontiers Television. Thank you for watching. My name is Olajumoke Babalola. Please stay with us as AM Live continues in just a while.